And thanks for staying with us. Now, for the past 20 years, Morning Live has brought you all the latest news making waves in the international landscape as well. And some of the stories dominating the headlines included 9/11, the 2004 tsunami, the death of Michael Jackson in 2009, the election of Barack Obama as the first African-American president in the United States in 2008, and of course, the election of Donald Trump as US president in 2016. However, we are currently also following a major political event in Europe, and this one seems to keep getting postponed. Brexit, that's what I'm talking about. And Brexit has dominated headlines because it's the first time that a country has divorced itself from its most important trading zone. So let's chat more about this and what's going on at the moment with the British High Commissioner to South Africa, Nigel Casey, and he joins me from our Sea Point studios in Cape Town. Thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Sakina. May I just say, first of all, happy birthday to Morning Live, but also pay my condolences and respect to Kholani Gwala. He was a great man, a great broadcaster, and I think he's a great loss to the South African media. So our condolences to his family and colleagues.
Oh, thank you, Your Excellency. Now, yesterday, Britain was due to leave the European Union, but of course, that deadline has now been extended to the end of January. And we know that elections are due to be held on the 12th of December. Is it safe to say that Brexit has turned into a bit of a mess?
Well, we're on a bit of a pause from Brexit now until at least at the end of January. As you said, we're having an election instead on the 12th of December. And the reason that has come about is because in the current Parliament, which was elected 2 years ago, it's proved impossible to get the two agreements which were negotiated by Theresa May and then by Prime Minister Boris Johnson through Parliament in a timely way. So instead, there's going to be a fresh general election. That's going to be where the focus of political energy is in the UK for the next month and a half.
So for those of us looking in from the outside, as South Africans, for example, we look at this and we think, well, it's somewhat bizarre for the United Kingdom to leave its most important trading zone. But obviously, this is what the people wanted, as evidenced in 2016. And this deadline is extended again. And do you perhaps get the feeling that perhaps the British public have regretted their decision?
Well, look, it was always going to be an immensely complicated endeavour to leave the European Union, an organisation we've been a member of since 1973, almost my entire lifetime. In 2016, the British public were asked a relatively simple question: do you want to remain a member of the EU or leave? And they gave an answer narrowly that they preferred to leave. And now translating that result, which the government and Parliament had pledged to honour into an agreed way of departure with the EU, a disentangling, a divorce, if you like, from an organisation with which we were deeply entwined, was always likely to prove time-consuming and difficult. So I'm not particularly surprised that it has taken this long, and there have been a few delays along the way. But the government remains determined to implement the outcome of the referendum, and we will see after the 12th of December who forms the next government and what their approach to this central question in British politics is going to be.
But what would an ideal Brexit look like for the UK, and what would it mean?
Well, look, the EU is a trading bloc, but it's much more than that. It's evolved over the years, evolved in significant ways since we joined, and in ways which have much broader political implications. And I say to friends in South Africa that it's worth reflecting as you yourselves go down the path of negotiating an African continental free trade area, how far you want to go in that process, because economic integration can in turn drive political integration, and you need to make sure that you have public consent along the way. Ideally, we want to stay very close to our friends and partners in Europe. We have always said we want a very close economic relationship, but we also want to regain sovereign decision-making powers in the British government, and that's what drove a lot of the voting in our own referendum. So we're trying to walk that line, keeping a close relationship for both, not just on economics, but also on security and political issues whilst respecting the wish of people in the referendum to ensure we have our own sovereign decision-making vested in our own parliament.
So obviously we're concerned about what this would mean for us as South Africa. The EU is South Africa's third largest trading partner, and many of the trade deals do have EU-UK partnerships. But how exactly is this going to affect South Africa? You did make mention that good trade deals will be proposed for the SADC region, but just talk to us a little bit more about that.
Well, South Africans can rest assured that there will be no damage to the relationship between South Africa and the UK on trade, because we have successfully negotiated with your government a replica of the existing arrangement that we have through the EU, the Economic Partnership Agreement, the EPA, so that whatever happens with Brexit, whether we leave with a deal as we hope or without a deal, our trade with South Africa and its neighbours is guaranteed, and even beyond that, the deal we've negotiated will in fact open opportunities for South African exporters selling products like wine to the UK to sell more. And that agreement is going to be a dynamic one. It will have a built-in agenda so that in future improvements and enhancements can be negotiated between our two governments. And so I think we can look forward to a future of growing economic cooperation, both on trade and, importantly, on investment, which is something I know your government is very keen to attract, and we're looking forward to next week's second South African Investment Conference in Johannesburg.
And just a final question. Theresa May failed thrice. Do you think that the new British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, will get the necessary support from the Conservatives? Well, it's really about whether what the electorate does now, because the next step in the process is a general election. So it's back to the public, and that's that's the next big moment in our politics. The next big moment for the rest of us is on Saturday morning, when we're hoping to have a triumph on the sporting field in Japan. Well, thank you so much for your time this morning. British High Commissioner to South Africa, Nigel Casey, talking to us about the latest Brexit postponement and its implications.